to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? Dana White's Contender Series Week 9 of the current season. We got a multicultural type of affair. We got Italian fighters, Brazilian fighters, Mexican fighters. We got a Tajikistan fighter, a Venezuelan fighter, sprinkled in with two Americans on the fight card. This is a multicultural type of fight card. It's pretty cool. Fighters from all around the world. Of course, there's some talent throughout this card. Specifically, Raul Rosas Jr. Of course, you guys probably heard a lot about him. He's only 17 years old, as he'll be fighting in essentially a co-main event slot on the card against Mando Gutierrez, a fellow Mexican fighter there. A tough outing for Raul. So we'll be getting to that fight here in a minute. We got Austen making his return to Dana White's Contender Series. Of course, many of you guys remember him for getting starched on this show a couple of years back against Greg Hardy, a lot of your guys' favorite fighter, who is now going to be fighting over in BKFC. And, the main event, you got two finishers there. And then in the first fight of the card, which we're going to be getting to in a second here, you got really two talented fighters, in my opinion. I was a little surprised to see that flyweight matchup as the first fight of the card there. But I guess you can argue that this card could have went a variety of ways. All right, so we're going to jump into the first fight here in a second. If you're new to the channel, please do hit that subscribe button. All of you guys, if you can hit that like button, it means a lot to me. You can catch me on all my social media platforms on Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _, and on Twitter, The MMA Teller. And if you have neither of those and you want to reach out to me, let's say you want to work with me with my official plays, you can always shoot me an email as well, MMAFortuneTeller@gmail.com. Kicking the card off, we have an exciting flyweight matchup here between Roybert Echeverria and Jafel Filio. The Venezuelan taking on the Brazilian here. First things first, Jafel Filio. This is a fighter that really has some solid skills down in the mat. He has some legit BJJ. You see it transfer into the MMA side of things. He's really gave a lot of his opponents trouble down in the mat. Haven't been particularly impressed with his striking. I feel that his striking definitely needs to show more evolution. At least from the fights that I was able to pull up on YouTube, nothing really stood out to me there. The majority of his fights, he's working the BJJ, whether he's subbing his opponents or even controlling them down in the mat, and then working the ground and pound. We're working the strikes there down in the mat, working to get to the TKO or whatnot. I haven't really seen anything too significant on the feet. In fact, I saw him landed on the feet. I saw him run into a little bit of trouble in the striking department. Eventually, he got a hold of his opponent, got the fight down to the mat, did his thing there. Roybert Echeverria, this is a fighter that really has impressed me with the limited amount of tape that I was able to pull up on him. He looks to be a solid striker, a scrappy striker. He has very quick hands. He mixes in the kicks very well. And this is a fighter that when I'm breaking down tape on him, some of the tape that I'm watching was from some years ago. He's 27 years old now. I was watching some of this tape on him when he was 24, 25 years old. I expect him to come into this fight having an edge on the feet. I really do. I know he's a little bit undersized as well. Has a lot of experience fighting over in LFA, even though it was against lower level competition. I expect him to have the edge on the feet. One of the fights I also watched at him, I see that he's working on his takedown defense. It's coming around. The way he was sprawling was very technically sound. I could see a path to victory if he's stuffing some takedowns on Jafel and making him pay on the feet, or if Jafel just tries to rush that takedown and gets caught with the strike. I do believe there's a possibility for that. Roybert is diverse with his attacks. I saw him throwing some wild stuff as well. He's not afraid to throw the knee up to the head as you're coming in. Not necessarily a flying knee is what I saw on tape, but it was kind of interesting. One of his opponents was pushing the takedown. He kind of timed a nice knee and hurt his opponent pretty bad with that too. Don't be shocked if you see some type of knee attack as Filio pushes the takedown. Jafel is a little bit more of the bigger man, naturally bigger man. He has double the amount of pro experience. This is why he's coming in as a favorite. Double the amount of pro experience, a little bit more of a battle-tested resume. He's a little bit bigger, as I said, 2 inches taller. Maybe has a little bit of a reach advantage there. But I'm not worried about that. In regards to the striking, I think that Roybert will be much quicker and sharper with his attacks, and he has some good pop and power in his strikes as well. As I said, fighting over in Titan FC for a while, a lot of the fights I was breaking down on him were even some of his amateur fights or some of his very early pro fights. So you're going to see evolution from him. I really do believe that. Even if it's just within the last 2 years, a guy that's going from 25 to 27 right now, I think, and a guy that shows natural skills and natural talent, I could expect to see some major growth there, and it's, to me, screams upset on this episode here. Of course, it's a bold claim. Again, look at the types of opponents that he's been fighting: 0-2, 2-17, guys with not a lot of experience, 3-0 there. His last opponent, 12-8. So lower level competition. That's the thing that you're going to understand here. But if we're going to try to shake things up, we're going to throw a dog in this card. You guys don't like it when I just throw constant favorites at you. We've seen how this show has gone, right? A lot of underdogs have came through. Statistically, this year and this season we've had more underdogs come through than ever before with the show, I do believe, according to Yanni the Greek. I believe that's what he said. Now, Yanni the Greek, you got to be careful if you're listening to anything that he says, because usually want to go the opposite way. But listen, I'm not telling you guys to run to the bank with this, and I don't want any of you guys putting too much money up on a risky play. But I do believe there's some value on Roybert Echeverria at plus 175. And that will be, if he keeps this fight on the feet, uses his striking, potentially lands a knockout shot or hurts Filio very bad. And again, I've seen Filio hurt on the feet. I've seen him tagged on the feet. So it's not like that we haven't seen that avenue there when we broke down tape on him. And one other quick thing to keep an eye on. Let's see how these fighters look Monday as they weigh in. Roybert Echeverria has fought in the flyweight division. He seems to be a fighter that's a little bit more proven to be a flyweight fighter. Jafel Filio, fighting the majority of his fights in the bantamweight division. He had a couple catchweight fights at 130. Keep an eye on how his weight cut goes, and that could be a positive for him or a negative, right? I mean, if he has a nice weight cut, he's a little bit more of the naturally larger man in there. But if he has a tough weight cut, maybe Echeverria is a little bit more fresh and ready to go. Big time favorite alert, Nurullo, Aliev taking on Josh Wick. Aliev is coming in as a minus 525 favorite right now. A little surprising to me. I get it. Aliev is a dominant grappler. He's been going out there, really handling business, only 22 years old, about to be 23. But Josh Wick has impressed me. Josh Wick, not to be confused with the part that Keanu Reeves played. Wish I can give you the full name there, but I know it did end in Wick. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the movie. As you guys can tell, I never saw that movie, but I hear Rogan chirping about it all the time. Do you guys recommend I check out that Wick movie? Comment below. But the White Mamba here, you see him hitting the pads, and it is what it is watching this. But if you break down his tape on YouTube, I've been impressed with his striking overall. I think that his striking is pretty crisp. He has very quick hands, throws some nice leg kicks out there. They're pretty speedy. And I think that if he can keep this fight standing, there's potential for him to have success in this fight. Now, something that I find pretty interesting going into this matchup is Aliev has a knack for going out there, winning decision victories. They're not necessarily the most exciting type of fights. You guys know what the show is about. The show is all about the exciting fight if you want to get that contract. I'm interested to see if Aliev's going to step on the gas here and go out there and look for the finish. You know, on last week's episode, a lot of you guys know I targeted a two-team parlay, which we had the Dagestani fighter who was fighting, I believe, in the co-main event slot. He was a big favorite, coming in at a similar line to what we're seeing Aliev come in here. The Dagestan fighter was able to go in there, rip that Kimura off, get that finish. He did get a contract. Of course, the other leg I had was Basharat in the main event. I'm not so certain that Aliev is deserving to be at the same type of a line that we saw the Dagestani come in on last week's episode, in my opinion. Mostly based on the fact that I think that Josh Wick is a talented fighter, and there's an avenue for victory here. Now, that all being said, I do expect Aliev to go out there and pull off a decision victory. I think that his pressure is going to be a lot for Wick to handle. He's probably going to solidify some of those takedowns, and we'll see what he could do with it there. But if he's not really able to do much with it, maybe you see a stand-up or whatnot. Maybe if he's not doing anything that's too dominant, and maybe Josh Wick comes into this fight in really good shape and pushes the pace in him late. Maybe he can kind of steal some rounds. That'd be fun and exciting to see. But if I'm being real with you guys, yes, Nurullo, Aliev to win this fight via decision. But also a side note, let's see if he steps in the gas and goes for a finish there down in the mat and tries to get a contract. Now, we all remember when Greg Hardy made a name for himself over on Dana White's Contender Series some years back, and Austen Lane was one of the fighters that he went in there and had some of that early success that Greg Hardy had in his MMA career. Of course, it somewhat plummeted. He's now going to be fighting over in the bare knuckle FC scene. I think that might work out well for him, if I'm being quite honest with you guys. But whether you like him or not, Greg Hardy is a guy that has good hand speed. He's a real athlete. He's big as hell. I could see him hurting some guys over there. But it's interesting because Greg Hardy, not to harp on him too much, but Greg Hardy's a guy that really lost confidence and seemed to be a lot easier to finish as his career went on, although he was stepping up the level of competition. Austen Lane, when he went in there and fought Hardy, you could tell that he was not on the level. He had some serious defensive flaws. Got caught with a big overhand or big straight right, whatever you want to call it, from Hardy there, and was put out. And when Lane fought that fight at the time, he only had 4 pro fights going into that fight. Obviously, he was a lot more green than he is now. Since that knockout loss to Greg Hardy, took another knockout loss to Frank Tate, and has since been, what do we got here? We got 7, 9, and 1, I believe we see here. Am I counting that right here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Excuse me, 7 and 1. Sorry about that, guys. He just had a knockout victory in the 4th round over Juan Adams, which I know some of you guys are not the biggest fans of Juan Adams. Juan Adams, the first fighter I ever interviewed. Much respect to Juan Adams. I think that Juan Adams actually is a dangerous fighter. He's a big-time wrestler. Just real quick, keep an eye on what he's been doing. The loss to Matthias Jafel. We know that Jafel is the real deal. He came off Dana White's Contender Series. He's fighting over in PFL. Just had a big victory over Brunno Capolazoa. So, and then other than that, winning fights and then just the losses in the UFC and then Austen Lane. So Austen Lane has shown development in his game. We saw him going out there pulling off a submission victory within some of those victories that he's had. I haven't been overly impressed with some of the other fighters that he's been defeating besides Juan Adams. I do think that he suffers from a mild case of giraffe syndrome. And if his opponent, Richard Jacobi, can be a little bit quicker to the punch, I think that Jacobi could have some success with a big shot there. Again, we've seen Lane finished. There is a common theme of Lane getting finished in his fights. And I think that a fighter like Richard Jacobi does have that type of potential. Now, Jacobi, 6-0-1. He's coming off a fight where it went to a draw because of a point deduction on his opponent, where he would have lost that fight if you check the judges' scorecards. But it was against an undefeated fighter in Heoga Silva over in LFA. Other than that, I've been decently impressed with the performance that he's went out there and put on. You see that he's growing. It's against lower level competition, but you see his game growing. His striking is okay for a guy that's his size, the way he moves around and some of the combinations I've seen him put together. I think that you can't tell me there's not a realistic chance that Jacobi's going to go in there and land a big shot there. He's very confident in his fights. He comes forward. He's a very solid man. He's more of a stout, solid type of dude. I could see him getting some takedowns on Lane. I've seen Lane taken down in a couple of his fights as well. He's struggled a little bit with takedown defense at times. If he's not able to work his jiu-jitsu, I could see him kind of getting controlled down the bottom, maybe getting some big shots landed on him. And I'm going to be taking Jacobi to win this fight here. Jacobi is a plus 170 dog, so I'm coming at you guys with another underdog here on this card. We're throwing some dogs at you guys. I'm going to take Richard Jacobi to go out there and really implement his will. He's going to come forward on Austen Lane. Austen Lane will try to use his footwork and use his length, but I think that Jacobi closes that distance and has some success in that avenue there, just kind of crunching him down, crunching in on him and closing the distance there. So give me Jacobi to get the job done there. And there's a possibility he finishes this fight, in my opinion. I mean, it's a heavyweight fight, of course. I think there's a realistic possibility he gets a finish here, whether it's a TKO down on the ground or lands a big shot on the feet. Now, this is the cool fight here, man. We got the young buck, Raul Rosas Jr., El Nino Problema, taking on Mando Gutierrez, El Toro, two Mexican warriors here that are going to be scrapping. Mando Gutierrez, he has decently impressed me from breaking down tape on him. He's very tough. There was one fight that I pulled up on him where he really went through some adversity in the first round, was almost finished, came back and ended up breaking his opponent. So you have to understand, you're dealing with a fighter that's not gonna fold in there. This is the type of fighter you can go in and have a very good first round against him. You could really put it on him. He's coming right back in the second round. He's looking to dominate you. I would say that Gutierrez, his strength is his grappling, in my opinion, but his striking is coming around to an extent. Some slight defensive flaws, like I said, in that one fight where he felt adversity, he was landed on the feet. He got hurt there. He got dropped, and but again, came back and used his grappling to get the job done. Now the issue here for him is that I feel like that I feel this young buck here, Raul Rosas, is a very talented BJJ player. He's been training jiu-jitsu since he's a kid. Comes from a fight family. His sister fights. His dad was a fighter. So if you've seen interviews with him, I mean, he's been fighting since he's a baby, right? He's been fighting since the very beginning, and that's the reason why you're seeing a kid like this get an opportunity. These pop-ups messing up the teller's video here. Uh-oh, there he is. And I see him signing the contract. And excuse all these pop-ups, but just get a look at him signing the contract, because it's pretty cool. It's not every day you see a 17-year-old get an opportunity like this. And I do believe, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he would be younger than Sage Northcutt was. I mean, this would be the youngest fighter on the UFC roster, maybe of all time, I believe I heard. I'm trying to remember that. But it would be cool nonetheless. I love seeing young fighters come in and develop in front of our eyes in the octagon. It's a very hard thing to do. Not a lot of fighters are able to do that. I think Raul Rosas is going to have success with his grappling here. Now, if you watch tape on him, he's been able to really bully and dominate his opponents with his jiu-jitsu game. So we haven't seen him tested so much on the feet, at least from the fights I was able to pull up, really using his jiu-jitsu just to outclass some of his opponents. Mando is capable down there. He's going to be a little bit undersized as well. Raul has a nice frame for the bantamweight division, and I'm taking the young buck here all day. I'm excited to root him on and see this young buck get the contract. We'll pull up the betting line here where you'll see Raul Rosas is a -155. I believe he was just a -150 as I started this video, at least right before when I was breaking down tape. So some slight movement already coming in on him. Maybe we see him close out at a -175. A lot of people jumping on the hype of the young kid, and just understand that Mando Gutierrez is a tough outing, in my opinion. And if Mando can keep this fight standing, maybe we see, we will get to see what Raul's made of on the feet. Maybe it's not as pleasant as some of us want to believe that it is. Or maybe Mando just makes it a grueling fight and shows that dog that he has in him, and maybe it's a fight that can go any way. But I favor more so Raul taking the back, controlling Mando, looking for submissions, and getting a sub. I'm going to say he gets a sub. Why not? It'll be a big moment on the show. I would love to see that. Raul Rosas Jr. via submission, maybe a rear naked choke. Here we go in the main event. We have the Italian taking on the Brazilian, two fighters that have a knack for finishing the fight. Leon Aliu taking on Brunno Ferreira. Now, the Italian fighter, I do believe he is of Albanian descent. I do believe he's an Albanian Italian, 33 years old, been training over at Roger Gracie's for some time. You see he has a blue belt there, so working on his jiu-jitsu. I'm going to be quite honest with you guys. I don't know what it was. I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed when I broke down tape on either of these guys. Brunno, a very tough fighter as well. He's undefeated, going out there finishing guys. Both these guys a little bit stocky, a little bit muscular. Just wasn't overwhelmed with their striking. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was the fact that their striking didn't necessarily impress me that much, and I was in the mood when I was watching the tape to see a very impressive striking type fighter. And maybe I saw they were just more scrappy and whatnot. Feija, though, does have some big power as far as when he went to his ground and pound. I saw him smashing some of his opponents. Seems to be a decently well-rounded fighter as well. Whereas Leon Aliu, I think he carries some power, but I am not that impressed with his technique. So you see him, he's coming off a knockout victory in his last fight against James Webb, a knockout victory over Esteban Mendoza. You see him pulling off some subs as well. I have a feeling that he was getting away with some of those knockout victories against guys that were a little bit lower level. Esteban Mendoza 6-11, losing record. Let's see if we can pull up any other of his knockout victories. The majority of his finishes coming through his BJJ anyways, but on the feet, like I said, not overly impressed there. I think that I'm going to edge Brunno Ferreira on the feet. I think that Ferreira can hold his own down on the mat as well. So I'm not I'm not necessarily crazy about Leon here. I'm going to be picking Brunno Ferreira, the Hulk, to win the fight. I think that the overall recipe points more towards his way. But this is a type of fight that it just kind of speaks to me that we can see an upset in the main event slot here. Two guys that go in there throwing heavy shots. Two fighters that are a little bit reckless to an extent. You know, Bruno's willing to really go in there and try to smash you. So you know, he leaves some openings. And then real quick, we'll run through Bruno's resume. 8-0 as a pro. You know, his last opponent was 10-3. Taking out Oliveira 33-18. I mean, these are more respectable opponents, and that's something that you could say definitely points more towards his way. At least the latter of his fights were against guys that have somewhat of a resume, but his early fights, But going out there, pulling off arm bars, you know, finishing with strikes, triangle chokes, rear naked chokes. Like I said, a very diverse fighter there. I'm going to take Brunno Ferreira to win the fight there. But I wouldn't be shocked with the upset. Brunno Ferreira, a -230 favorite over Leon Aliu, a +175. I think that line would favor Leon a little bit more so, in my opinion. I think it favors him just because I think that line's a little hefty, in my opinion. I think it should be more like a -190 on Brunno Ferreira. And, you know, maybe a comeback on Leon at like +150, 155, something like that. So keep an eye on that betting line there. But a fight that it's a little risky, in my opinion. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up DWCS Week 9. We only have a couple more fights left, or a couple more episodes for this season. You guys know we got Bo Nickel headlining a card. I'm going to have some cool content coming your guys' way. I'm going to do a little video on Bo Nickel. There's some things I want to talk about. I want to have it on record. I think you guys know where I'm going with that. I want to have that on record. You guys know I've called out a lot of future champions before, and a lot of them have came to fruition. Piotr Jan, you know, there's some fighters that are right there knocking on the door. Magomed and Kalayev. I did say Khamzat Chimaev would be a champ as well. We'll see how that goes. But you know, I've been pretty accurate with some of those fighters that I've clung on to, and I'm saying that Bo Nickel's going to be a middleweight champion in the next 2 years. I know that seems very quickly, but yeah, you guys, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I want to talk about some interesting facts about what's been going on in the middleweight division and how there is a path to a quick run at the title in Bo Nickel. But I have a video coming to you guys, but just excited for that episode. I'm sure you guys are as well, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this breakdown. Please hit that like button if you guys haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. You guys know I got nothing but love for all you guys out there. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and you know, no UFC fight card coming up a week from this Saturday. We have a little break, and I'll have that video coming out to you guys there soon. If you want to keep up with me, and if you guys are going to be missing the teller, I'll try to throw some mixed content on the channel here coming at you next week anyway, some different type of stuff. But you guys can always keep up with me on Instagram, and I've been banging out those Instagram live videos. So go catch me on there. Would love to chat it up with you guys there. All right, guys? On that note, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.